Welcome to the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast, hosted by me, Jen
and me, Aideen Rutledge.
This podcast is dedicated to exploring the world of occupational therapy, sharing the latest research and techniques and providing insights into the many ways that occupational therapy can help people of all ages live more fulfilling and meaningful lives.
Whether you are a practicing occupational therapist, a student of occupational therapy, or simply curious about this fascinating field, this podcast is for you. We'll be interviewing experts in the field, sharing stories from the front lines of occupational therapy practice, and providing tips and advice for anyone looking to get the most out of their therapy.
So sit back, relax, and join us on this exciting journey into the world of occupational therapy in Ireland.
Welcome back, everyone. We are recording season 2 of the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast. Myself and Jen thought we would kick it off with just a discussion about how last season went and what our hopes and plans are for season 2. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Aideen. It's great to be back, and it's great to welcome all of our listeners back. When we started, I was never sure whether we would actually make it to the end of one season, let alone be contemplating starting on a second season. So it's really exciting to be heading into talking to lots of new people.
It really is, Jen. I remember when we started off first, we thought, okay, if we have about we'll aim for 6 episodes, and then we were on a roll. And the more we did then, the more we thought about other people that we needed to speak to and wanted to speak to and wanted to approach. And we were so lucky that everyone was really enthusiastic and said yes. We had no refusals. We've had no refusals at all to date. Touch wood.
Touch wood. I know people have been so generous with their time and with their knowledge and their expertise. It's been really, really a privilege to be able to talk to the range of people that we have. It was a bit daunting though, gotta say, like when we launched, the whole butterflies in the stomach and imposter syndrome and who the hell do we think we are that we can put out a podcast about occupational therapy in Ireland? It still sits with me a little bit. What about you?
Absolutely, Jen. I remember, I think when we were recording, because obviously we recorded all of the episodes a few months in advance of us actually launching. And while we were in that kind of flow, it felt fine. I really enjoyed, I often talk about how it's an opportunity to speak to someone and to people that you wouldn't ordinarily get to speak to and have that protected time to hear about what they're doing. It's so interesting and it's such a privilege to hear other people's day-to-day work, ideas, innovations, etc. And then as the date approached for when it was going to go live, there was obviously a bit of like social media hype around it. We tried to have a few posts around when it was happening, what it was all around, and we recorded introductions ourselves. And then that's when it started to get a little bit scary, and I started to, I suppose, second doubt myself and started listening back to all of the episodes and going over them with a fine-tooth comb and being very self-critical around what I was asking and things I was saying. But I suppose that's all very natural, isn't it? As you say, imposter syndrome. We hadn't done it before. It hadn't been done before in Ireland. This was the first Irish OT podcast. We had nothing to compare ourselves to.
Yeah, and I think I was struck by Carolyn O'Neill, who's a social media influencer expert, XOT, but we'll still call her an OT, who, really highlighted, you're probably going to get naysayers and people who will say, who the hell do they think they are? And I was like, oh God, I hadn't thought about that bit. But actually, the response has been really, really positive, hasn't it? I found people have been very receptive to it.
Everyone has been really encouraging and supportive, and we might not see that publicly, but behind the scenes people would send private messages and share what particular episodes meant to them and how it maybe inspired them or changed their practice. So even though I suppose maybe not everybody knows about us yet, hopefully we're making some sort of difference to people who are listening and find it helpful.
I've found that I've been on different events and training courses, and people kind of knowing about the podcast is really nice, and sharing about it, and then kind of coming over and saying hi, which is always really, really nice. And I think, having that sense of community and connection, which I feel is really sustaining for me in my work. So knowing that there's people who get it, who are supportive, who share an experience. And even though as an OT, I'm not working in immediately alongside OTs, having that wider community in Ireland, I think is so important, because what's that saying? Unity through community. I feel like maybe AOTI had that as a a
Yeah.
tagline for one of the campaigns. But together as occupational therapists, we are definitely stronger, and we really need to be supporting and encouraging each other to showcase and to highlight what we're doing, and to share it, and to show other people how amazing we know we are.
Exactly. And I felt that a lot at the AOTI conference back in, wasn't it October that took place? There was a lot of support. We had a lot of people approach us and say that they had listened in and that they were finding it really helpful and exciting. And some people also suggesting that they come on as guests and discussing what they had to offer to the podcast. So that opportunity to network and connect with OTs at the AOTI conference was
Yeah.
very helpful.
And I absolutely love that. When we've got a few people coming up on this season who did contact us and said, I've got something to say. Can I come on? And that is so helpful. People who are passionate and enthusiastic about their area of practice are generally very expert in it, and just really insightful. It's really, really interesting to find out about their experience. So we've got a real mix, hopefully, in this season, of different people from different backgrounds that we might not have heard from before.
I think that's what we've done differently about this podcast, or this season rather, Jen. We have branched out into other areas, niche areas of occupational therapy practice, where occupational therapists may have paved a new path. Jen, what about, let's do a little reflection before we start talking about season 2. Let's do just a little reflection on season 1. What was the highlight of season 1 for you? I know you don't want to maybe pinpoint a particular episode because they were all brilliant in their own right. But was there any particular take home point that, yeah, sums up season 1 for you?
Do you know what I actually really loved about season one was when guests were able to share their own personal experience. um in OT college, and often, when we're in professional roles, we're very focused on saying the right thing, and presenting in a certain way. And I actually think the lived experience of what it feels like to experience an illness, or to experience a challenge, to navigate difficulties, real life difficulties in the workplace, I find those are really helpful. So when people are real and genuine about, the positives and the challenges, I get a lot from that. I kind of go, oh, it's not just me that finds these things difficult, or that, it can be challenging for. So that really resonated with me. And there was like lots of people were really generous with sharing their own personal experience. But John in particular, his own experience, I found that really helpful. Avan, about being a mom, navigating the system, I really enjoyed her kind of take on things. And it is hard to pinpoint. There was so many other guests who just really shared their own personal experience, which I was really appreciative of.
Honesty, I think, makes it, and it makes for interesting listening because, as you say, then it's more relatable and it's not like generic responses. And that's, I
Yeah.
suppose, why we wanted this as well, that it isn't, we don't, I suppose, we're not bound by parameters. This is a natural podcast. We can,
Yeah. It's
there
not
aren't.
the sanitized version.
Exactly, exactly. It's the real life version.
We're a
Yeah,
little bit messy at times, and that's okay.
exactly. For
But what
me,
was your highlight? Sorry.
yeah, for me, I know this is a wee bit now self-indulgent, but I loved the work-life balance episode that we recorded,
Yeah.
Jen. But I
Yeah.
do also think that we've made a conscious effort of weaving that through each of the individual episodes. That's a common question that we ask about how do you balance it all? Because we all struggle with trying to keep those boundaries in place between work and life, and not becoming fatigued with the compassion that we give to the people that we serve. So I love that work-life balance. And you know what really stuck out for me was Caroline O'Neill's particular response with that was, well, I don't really have a balance. And, I'm not doing all of the, I suppose the yoga
Sitting
and
in yoga, yeah.
morning, the stock answers. She didn't have any of those. She was really honest about that. And that if you are, working really hard and you're enjoying it, well, then that's okay too. So it's
Passionate about what you do.
exactly.
Absolutely.
And not feeling guilty, maybe. And I suppose for me, starting out in a new business, there is obviously going to be extra work and extra
Yeah.
time, and to not feel guilty about that if that's what's needed right now. And also, again, importantly, if you're enjoying it, if you're
Yeah.
sitting down to do work that you enjoy, or you're doing a little bit extra because you're intrigued by something, that's okay.
I in reflecting on 2023 and my kind of intentions for 2024, that was one of the things I put on a recent LinkedIn post, was very much good enough is what I'm aiming for, and not trying to be everything to everyone and not trying to do it all. And I might have mentioned this quote before, but it really struck me. There's a quote, and I probably won't get it quite right, but it kind of says, we are the daughters of feminists who fought so that we could be anything, and we heard we have to be everything. And I feel, as a woman, as a mom, as a business owner, as an OT, sometimes that pressure to feel that I have to be everything to everyone all of the time. And it's just not feasible. So
No.
I am absolutely embracing that good enough is good enough this year, and trying to, not prioritize everything.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
love
Is
that.
that even a thing? You can't prioritize
Yeah.
everything.
And I also heard someone say, Jen, that you can do one thing good at one time. So, okay, sometimes family takes the focus, and you're being a great mom, a great wife, a great daughter. And then sometimes work takes over and you're doing really great at that, but you can't do everything perfectly all at once. And there's
Yeah.
times and priorities and different times for things to take a priority. So
Yeah.
it's just, again, that good enough thing that you're not going to have it all balanced
Yeah.
perfectly all at once.
Yeah. I think that was nice during the last season, was asking people, what they do, and getting real answers to that. As you say, I think sometimes just knowing the struggle's real and that's okay is
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
Has there been any feedback that you've got from anybody that kind of resonated with you, that you've thought, actually, that's, about the podcast, that you felt that was positive?
What I found was we definitely had our regular, committed, loyal listeners that every Sunday morning they got up and they went on their walks and they listened to the podcast, which is lovely.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And you know who you are. We got our little messages from you, and we really appreciate it. And then I think there are others who've dipped in and out, which is, obviously not every episode's going to resonate with every OT. And also, I think there were parents that found some of the particular episodes very helpful. I know Sarah Devlin's episode, The Teacher, who specialised in autism, was very helpful for some parents. As you say, Ivan's episode, as a parent, speaking resonated with a lot as well. So, although again, people don't publicly maybe comment, we do get that feedback that it has been helpful. And another thing about season one, I know that naturally we maybe approached people who we were interested in professionally ourselves. With season two, we've tried to venture out of our comfort zone a little bit and speak to people that maybe we wouldn't ordinarily be in contact with or have connections with within our own
Yeah.
specialisms within occupational therapy.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. Um, just stretching it a little bit, and looking at the whole range. And
Yeah.
the thing is with OT, I just want to talk to everybody. I
Yeah.
think we could do a podcast a week every day for years and still be finding people who I would love to talk to, and be interested in. But yeah, it's good to really push the boundaries a little bit. And we have always said we have a very particular niche that we both work in, and we want the OT podcast to be about more than that. Going back though to the listeners, it's been, what I have really liked is seeing the numbers, and kind of the numbers of people, going into the thousands that are listening, which is not what I expected. When you put it out, you kind of go, oh, maybe a handful of our friends might listen. And it's gone definitely beyond that. And we can also see in our metrics where people are listening. And while the vast majority are certainly within Ireland, we're also getting people listening from the US, from the UK, from Australia, New Zealand, and then some unusual, like Germany, there was South Africa, there was a few other places that kept popping up, which was really interesting and nice to know that other countries are interested in looking at maybe what we're doing here in Ireland, or it might be expats, who knows, people who are keeping the connection. But that was lovely to see.
Really interesting. And what we're trying to do as well in season 2, again, we don't want to spoil too much or give anything away, but we are going to speak to occupational therapists from other countries that have that lived experience in working as an OT abroad. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. Okay, Dubai and Australia are the 2 countries that we're going to feature.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. It's always nice to see, where are we at compared to where other people are at. And, I think I was surprised in season 1, Anya O'Day mentioned actually Ireland is at the forefront of some areas of research and some information that we gather. And, it's nice to recognize where we're at and our strengths, as well as obviously areas that we want to develop as well. So that's really nice to see.
So Jen, I remember, again, as I said at the beginning, we had aimed for 6 episodes in season 1, and then it suddenly was 12 episodes, and we kind of had to stop ourselves and say, okay, no, we'll save that for later. And now we're at a point in season 2 where we have started recording, and we're aiming for 12 episodes again, and we have those slots allocated to our speakers, which is absolutely brilliant. And again, we're thinking ahead of the future and people that might be candidates for season 3, a 3rd season.
Yeah.
What's your plans for the Irish OT podcast? Where do you see it going, and
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? I would love to spread it wider. I think our listenership is definitely growing, but I think I would love for people who listen and who enjoy it to maybe encourage or share it with others, so that we can continue to increase. Because, like, say, showcasing in Ireland and outside of Ireland, I would love to. In season 2, we've got the majority of OTs again, which is great, but I'd like to push that into other areas and other disciplines, other people who've used services, find out a lot more about their experience. I think it's always interesting. We had John, who's a service user last season, and how his experience might be different to his OT. And this is one thing that I'm very excited about in season 2. Another little sneaky peek. We actually have the OT that worked with John that we're going to talk to, and her experience of that, which I think is really fascinating. Even if you're not in the mental health field, just to understand that different experience is really interesting.
From both angles?
Yeah, definitely. Oh,
And then
yeah. Sarah Devlin as well. That was another one from last season that you mentioned, Sarah being a teacher and what she needs from OTs and what helps her in her job. I'd like to hear maybe more from other disciplines, what their experience of occupational therapy is, what helps, what doesn't help. And, we don't always get it right, or we think we're doing something really useful, and then it's like, actually, that's not what I need right now. So, finding out more about that.
And yes, another spoiler, we have a speech and language therapist joining us on season 2. So yes, we aim to not just have occupational therapists. We do want to widen the net, as Jen said, and hear from other disciplines.
I was going to say, what are your hopes, Aideen, for the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast?
My hopes, I suppose I started off pre-season 1, Jen, with this being a hobby for me. And that opportunity to speak to people that I wouldn't ordinarily get an opportunity to speak with, that protected 45 minutes to really hear about what other people are doing and to be able to share that message. So I want this to continue to be enjoyable and to be, because it is our own time. This is us using up our own time. So it has to be enjoyable. In season 1, I went down a rabbit hole of editing a lot. So I'm keen not to do that in season 2. So the content might be a little bit more raw.
I think you went and edited, and then I went and re-edited or undid the edit.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, it's grand, it's fine.
I know. So I suppose it might be a little bit more rough and ready this season because it's obviously a huge time commitment just to have things nice and shiny and polished. And I suppose, yes, I would like to just see how season 2 goes, look at our numbers and see, is it useful for people? We would love to hear a little bit more feedback on, is this something that is useful? Is this worthwhile?
Yeah.
And do we continue with this? Is it serving a purpose before we consider season 3?
I think that's really fair because, we put it out, we see the numbers and who's listening, which is always great. And we get some feedback from people that we know, which is always lovely. A few bits of comments here and there from people we don't know, but we would absolutely, I think with any venture, you want to know that it's making an impact or a difference. So please do, if anybody wants to get in contact with us and just let us know, how you're finding it, what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like more of or less of. Should we keep going? The Irish Occupational Therapy, it's irishotpodcast@gmail.com. Or we're mainly on Instagram. We've got an Instagram page, but both myself and Aideen as individual practitioners are on Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We're on all the socials. So do drop us a line and just let us know where you're at with it.
Yeah, private message on Instagram's probably, or email is the best way to get us. So any suggestions or maybe even if you feel like you want to come on as a guest or anything that you think might help develop the Irish OT podcast, we're very keen to hear from you.
It's one of the things that I do like about Ireland is it's a small country and it's a small number of occupational therapists that we have in Ireland, but it is a very vibrant community, I think. Well, I've learned, and to be honest, I didn't always know this. So when I was in the UK and I came back, and I did join AOTI, but I just didn't really feel a part of it. And I did feel a little bit of a difference between where that was at the time and the RCOT, where I felt, very connected to my OT roots. And I feel it's getting better. I do think it's getting stronger, but I think it's only through connection with each other that we do get stronger. So I would, as I said at the start, that unity and community. So hopefully, for me, that's been one of the really nice things about doing this podcast.
And another thing for me, Jen, is the accessibility of a podcast. So I am part of some working groups within AOTI and they're absolutely brilliant. I really value them, but it is a time commitment during the day, usually whenever and I suppose that's difficult for me now as a private OT to make that time to attend those meetings, which I absolutely prioritize. But the podcast is a way that you can access connection in your own time, on your own terms, tune into things that you relate to and that you can connect with, and then leave aside the things that aren't relevant to you. So that and also there's no time limit to it. It doesn't have to be on that Sunday morning when it's released each week. It can be, as I said last season, on your journey that you've planned on a Friday morning.
Yeah.
So I for me, that's the beauty of podcasts, being able to dip in and out, but keep yourself afresh and abreast with what is going on locally and nationally.
Definitely. I'm a huge fan of podcasts and audiobooks. Anything that I can do on the go.
Multitasking.
Which may not be a good thing, but it just keeps me engaged 100%.
Yeah. So you're doing the ironing, you're keeping up to date with what's going on, you're in the car, you're doing these things anyway. And it is hopefully easy listening that people can dip in and out without having to concentrate too much.
Has there been anything for you, Aideen, that you've learnt about occupational therapy or about OT in Ireland that you didn't know before you started the podcast?
Do you know what? Sometimes when you think about the occupational therapy role in a particular area, it's ambiguous and you wonder, what do people actually do day to day? And that's again one of the common questions we ask is, what does a typical day look like for you? And it's been really reassuring to hear our core constructs as OTs ring through in all of those answers. The practicalities, the functional aspect of our role, the day-to-day, encouraging independence, what's important to the individual that's receiving occupational therapy. That really has been very striking in all of the people that we've interviewed.
It's reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just that sense of, okay, I'm getting it right. I'm doing the right things here. We're all on the same page.
And it's also helped me be grounded as an OT in my day-to-day work, not to overcomplicate things, not to second question myself that does this make a difference?
Bringing it back to basics.
Exactly. Yeah. So Jen, looking forward to season 2 ahead with you. I really enjoy I love whenever usually on a Monday we have our recordings and it's my touch and base with Jen day. We usually get a wee catch up before and after. So I'm really looking forward to more opportunities to spending time with you and to meeting all the incredible people that have agreed to join us on the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast. Bring on season 2.
Bring on season 2, and thank you to all our listeners for the support, the encouragement, and please do keep in touch.
That's all for today's episode on the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussion and found it informative and engaging. If you've any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. You can email us at irishotpodcast@gmail.com or connect on Instagram or Facebook.
And remember to subscribe to our podcast so that you never miss an episode. If you found this episode helpful, please leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback is important and helps us to improve the show, so please do leave it. Thank you for listening to the Irish Occupational Therapy Podcast, hosted by myself, Jen Trechek.
And myself, Aideen Rutledge.
We look forward to sharing more insights and knowledge with you in future episodes. Until then, take care.